Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships, and yes, today we are finally covering the Smolensk B, as this is the feature of this year's Black Friday, is the Smolensk is going to be available for purchase. And it's much different than a standard B variant, where it usually comes as a discount. The Smolensk B, though, is going to be in an auction, and it will only be found in that auction. It won't be found in any of the loot boxes, so it's not like you're going to get this ship any other way, even through gambling on it. It is simply in the auction, and that is it. Very exclusive event, since there are only 2,000 Smolensks for the entire world here in this auction. So 1,000 of them will be the regular Smolensk, and then another 1,000 will be the Smolensk B variant. No difference other than the camo and the name. So the regular Smolensk will be for 35,000 doubloons. That'll be the starting bid for that auction. And the Smolensk B will have a 350,000 coal minimum bid. I would expect those to go way up from there, especially considering that is the starting point and there are only 2,000 of these things for the entire world. Not a lot, especially given how some people do spend quite a bit of money on this game. But personally, I am very glad that there's not going to be very many of these things. I get very frustrated when trying to deal with these ships because the Smolensk is just ridiculous. The ship is incredibly strong. If you didn't know what this thing is and the reason it was removed, well, you're probably getting a bit of a picture of it here in this initial part of the game where, yeah, you have 16 destroyer guns, much like a Colbert, but you actually get good shell velocity with those guns. A little worse DPM than Colbert, but you do gain a smoke as well. So it is a much easier ship to play than a Colbert, and the concealment is quite nice. Along with that, the armor is very trollish, since this is a light cruiser. It's much smaller than a Colbert. A Colbert takes much more citadels much more easily, where this ship, you're going to see flat broadside, AP, you do not have to worry about it. It's something I'm not too impressed with on both sides. I'm not a huge fan of how much damage some of these cruisers can take when angled, to overmatch damage that is. And I'm not a huge fan of the lack of damage that these things take when they're broadside. To me, it seems like that would be a mistake that should be punished. Smolensk is kind of the poster child for that. So when it was removed, though, it's just because it was a little too strong, but obviously it was too popular was the main idea that they went with. But we all know it's popular because it's just so ridiculously powerful. This is a very strong surface ship and a little too easy to use, I think. Colbert is just very difficult to use, and even though that ship does have some massive strengths, especially if you watch someone like John the Ruthless play it, it is amazing. He is so good in that ship, but I can't do that, and I'm pretty sure you guys can't do that either. So in a Smolensk, though, a lot of people can do that, or similar to that level, is kind of the idea here. So when you see one of these in game, you'll know it's going to be very difficult to deal with it, is kind of what I'm getting at here. Getting away from this situation, Moskva and a Kansas shooting at us, as well as Fastable. We have a smoke that we can just use here. We do also have a Hydro that's going to help us avoid torpedoes in smoke, because if you're smoked up and you're just spamming people with HE, more than likely destroyers are just going to spam torps into your smoke. It's a good way to deal with this ship, so very important to use our Hydro here. But the real star of the show here is just these guns. You're going to do so much damage with them because they're so easy to use. Into destroyers at longer ranges like this, even 10, 11 kilometers, really not too big of an issue to actually hit these things. I'll get to the build in a little bit, but part of the build does actually rely on using some range mod, sacrificing some DPM even for the extra range, because the range is actually just that valuable. It's that usable, I guess we'll say. Something like the Colbert or Jinan, some of these other light cruisers, you really don't necessarily want to take all the range you can possibly get just because the shells get so floaty at those longer ranges. Not so with this thing. So in this game, we have done a decent amount of farming at A. We managed to get away before we get caught, right? Our team kind of collapsed on that flank, and we managed to get away before, well, that Napoli was looking a little scary. We got pretty lucky that he grounded there in the B cap and didn't make it through the gap. That probably would have spelled our doom, but fortunately we do manage to get away. And now this Moskva, I think, goes AFK here, but we do have a bit of an uphill battle to finish out this game here, since the enemy team does have a bit of a points advantage. And they're at least tied a little up on ships here, but AFK Moskva does kind of help us out a ton here. This is pretty much the bread and butter of a Smolensk, though. You want to be around your teammates. You don't want to really be out on your own because you need someone to spot for you, right? This is a situation where you're using your smoke screen as a way to just prevent incoming damage, essentially. But you're going to need someone to spot for you. So if you're going to be playing the Smolensk, make sure you're, well, I guess you could play it in a div with a spotting DD, something like that. But random teammates are going to be spotting things for you as well. So learning how to position your ship so that you are getting that advantage of your teammates spotting for you, you're going to apply just a ton of damage. And as games go on, of course, we know cruisers get more and more powerful since there's less targets to deal with, there's less chance of getting caught in a crossfire. You can kind of project your power a little more aggressively. And that's very, very nice in these later game scenarios. Trying to deal with this Kansas here. Fortunately, he does eat a couple of torpedoes, and that's going to be us finishing him off. Kind of stealing that one a little bit, but it had to be done. We had to finish that one off. Then we're going to torp at the Sevastopol here, going into the A-cap. And I make a mistake, since I haven't played this ship in a very long time. Not a huge fan of playing this thing. It's just, don't get me wrong, it's very, very good. I just prefer other playstyles. So we're grounded flat broadside on to a Sevastopol. That is what's about to happen here. I think we can all count this as a mistake that probably should be punished, yeah? I don't think that's a very hot take. I think we probably should be eating citadels, assuming he does come through to spot us. Finally, we are able to get a little bit off the island here, start moving a tiny bit. And this could be aim bug, this could be all these island issues that we have with the aiming system, but even if that wasn't aim bug there, you're not citadeling a Smolensk like this. When they're flat broadside at these close ranges, it doesn't take citadels. Here, you should see this one land. Look at where it goes. Right through our ship. I mean, I'm laughing now because, you know, I'm the one who's playing this ship. It's just so stupid, but it's very frustrating. That Sevastopol player has every right to be frustrated about that mechanic. One of the other reasons I was glad that Smolensk was removed, and I personally am happy that not many of them are coming back. Some of them are coming back for newer players, but there's not going to be just this massive deluge of Smolensks into the matchmaker that we got to deal with, because that's just annoying. You catch one grounded broadside, like, it cannot get any worse than that, let's just say. It's so bad. And then we're going to use this island in a very cheesy way to try and finish him off here. This Sevastopol played it very well. Not pushing out around this island, dealing with our torpedoes. He played it quite well. He was just pressured to make a play because our Freddy actually forced him out. And we took some damage angled. Notice the overmatch there did some work. So maybe if you catch this thing when it's angled, sometimes, but it's still just such a small ship to hit, especially at those longer ranges. It's pretty maneuverable as well. Next up, the Shimakaze here, trying to finish off the last few enemy ships, and surprisingly, pulling out a win here out of this match. Lastly, you can reset caps, even if things aren't spotted. Yeah, so we waited to see when we get spotted. We know that the gearing has to be on the left side of the cap there, since he couldn't spot us from behind the islands. And I took a random shot at a distance I thought maybe he'd be at. And we got a reset. And now we're going to miss a bunch, because he's actually traveling towards the left side of the cap, and I was assuming he would be kiting away here. So, but you fire fast enough with this thing that, yeah, you're very dangerous even when things aren't spotted. No radar, no problem. We'll just blind fire your smoke. If you're going to shoot at us especially, that tells us exactly where you are. This is a very, very dangerous ship. So I can understand why a lot of you are probably quite excited to see this thing coming back if you haven't had it before, especially if you're a light cruiser player. This thing is absolutely devastating. It is so, so, so good. But unfortunately, perhaps if that's how you're going to look at it, unfortunately for you, it is going to be in a very expensive auction, and it won't be available in the loot boxes. So don't expect to be able to get this thing at a later time out of the Black Friday loot boxes. That can be a way to get these Black Friday ships in the past, right? Where you actually would, if you had all the other Black Friday ships, well, you could get them in the loot boxes because, well, the pool would be very limited in which ships were available in that loot box. but Smolensk B will not be in that loot box, at least as far as I know. And as I'm recording this, the auction hasn't quite started yet, but I think by the time this video goes live, this should be up and you'll see the actual prices for it. Yeah, Smolensk is coming back for a very limited group of people though. So for me personally, that is not as bad as it could have been. I was very worried when they announced that Smolensk B was a variant that was coming back in the dev blog, and they didn't say how it was coming back. I was pretty scared that this ship was going to be available for a normal purchase. And again, I understand that that's a very privileged take since I already have these things. But just for playing anything else other than this ship, it's a good thing, in my opinion, just because it's so strong. Personally, though, if you want to know, if you're frustrated by that take, my real perspective on this is they should just nerf these ships and bring them back normally. That's my actual opinion on these things. Don't leave them in an overpowered state just for veteran players to have and just steamroll matches in. Actually balance them, make them fun to play against while keeping the general idea behind these ships, right? The HE spam with a smoke, sure, but figure out how to balance it so that it's not so overpowered that you have to remove it from sale or whatever. That's kind of my idea behind it, what I would actually like to see. But that, as we know, is probably not going to happen. The detect tier on this build is 10 kilometers. Our range is 16 kilometers. Very, very comfortable to use. Of course, running concealment. We're going to run top grade since there are times when we're going to get advantage out of that for our DPM. Heavy HE even, right? We're not having that penalty, that 15% penalty, since the guns are small. They are Grozavoy guns, essentially, and a 4.5-second reload on 16 of those guns with a 10% fire chance. Yeah, you are lighting a ton of fire. Superintendent is very nice to get yourself not only an extra heal, but also an extra smoke. That's kind of your lifeline. I like to use them a lot earlier game, just because there's a lot of people that want to kill you early games, so the longer you can survive, the easier things are going to get if you have to run around and play without a smoke. AR is just too good to pass up. I'm even using Demo Expert to buff that fire chance even further. You could use consumable enhancements, but I haven't really found the need for it. Incoming fire alert or priority target, one of the two is always nice to take on some of these light cruisers, especially one like the Smolensk that everyone hates and likes to focus. It's nice to know when you're getting shot at, so you know to dodge or start maneuvering. Last stand though, just because I had one extra point, I didn't really know what to do with it. I don't really feel like the rudder or engine gets knocked out too much on this thing, but there you go. The build though, range mod, 16% extra range. Yeah, I mean, they might show reload, but let's be honest here. Tier 10 matchmaker these days, yeah, even 16 kilometers is going to feel a little short, especially given how usable these guns are at that range. The shell velocity is just ridiculous, so it allows you to play very comfortably within that 16 kilometer range. That's my opinion. There are some people, I'm sure, that do take reload and make a great example out of it and can play it very well. I personally am not good enough to do that with this ship. I haven't played enough, haven't practiced enough with it, but there are some of those people who are good enough in these light cruisers that can do that. But I just find it easier to play, and it's still just ridiculously powerful with range mod. The damage output is still kind of crazy. So there you go, Smolensk B coming back. Let me know what you think. Are you going to try and go for it in the auction? Beware, it will be very, very expensive. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.